Now, if you've been stuck in your fat loss, this may be the one thing that's holding you back. And this is something that's really stalled some of my fat loss recently, and only just discovered why. In this podcast, we're going to be talking about cortisol and how cortisol affects fat loss and how we can manage cortisol and its effects. So in regards to cortisol as itself, I end to talk about my own story. So working a hell of a lot, fairly high level of stress, working maybe 80 hours a week, last 2-3 weeks, had a blood test done, and my cortisol level was off the charts. Well, very high. And the reality is, over the last 6 to 8 weeks, I've been in a fat loss phase after going through a very big gaining phase where you obviously accumulate some body fat in that period of time, which is completely normal. Now, what happened is also I was always been like resistant and really struggling to get my body fat and body weight to come down, despite my calories being very low and doing everything to a T. Hence, having the blood work done and finding, we have an issue, cortisol. And today we're going to go through what cortisol is, why this happens, and how we can fix it so we can release the fat loss handbrake for you, implementing the same things I'm going to do for myself. Now, if you understand what cortisol is the stress hormone that is released from the adrenal glands. So whenever we get super stressed in terms of working a lot, having problems in life, having challenges, that's a big thing that can really crank yourself up to the roof alongside training at very high volume. So one of the other things this affects very closely with cortisol is in regards to metabolic function, your metabolism, and also blood sugar regulation, which then comes into play when you're looking to lose body fat. If your metabolism's not running optimally and you can't handle blood sugar very well because your cortisol is very high, this is going to make it more difficult for you to lose body fat. Now, if we look at the cortisol fat loss connection, high cortisol levels tend to show increased levels of appetite, which is a reason why a lot of people, when they get stressed, they emotionally eat. I'm actually interested in the other way around. If I'm extremely stressed, I don't want to eat, and I find it more difficult to get the food in. So people tend to have a one or the other situation. The other thing with cortisol is it's also a catabolic hormone. Now you have anabolic and catabolic. So anabolic is in terms of building muscle. Catabolic is in terms of the breakdown of tissue and breakdown of muscle. So cortisol being high, it means you're more prone to have a worse body composition and be losing muscle tissue whilst you're trying to lose body fat. The big thing that plays with increased cortisol is chronic stress. So this is affected obviously by workload and then can lead into things like having digestive problems. Like my brother's a good example, he tends to get upset stomach and digestive issues if he's very stressed. And then a lot of people also suffer with insomnia. Now, if we look at strategies in terms of how we manage cortisol and stress levels, one of the biggest drivers if you're training at a very high level like myself is actually training and working out. So what I'm actually doing, instead of doing 5 weight training sessions a week, from today, I'm only doing 4. So I'm going to train Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Sunday. I'm going to keep the same training split I have, but just give myself some more recovery time to try and allow for the extra stresses I have in life. This is an important thing to understand. You can't just keep bludgeoning yourself to death in terms of pushing harder, because at some point your body doesn't want to go. And this is where it's often the path of least resistance, is actually sometimes doing less, you get better results. One of the best ways you can help with cortisol and managing that is exercise, which is going to relax you. So if that's whether you like walking outside in the sun, if you like playing with your children, or playing a sport like that's not super intense, then that will work very well for you. And I'll give you an example of what not to do. Today I was like, I'm not weight training on Mondays now. Maybe I'll start boxing again. I was like, that sort of mitigates the effect of what I'm trying to do here in terms of reducing training volume. So an important thing to understand is that we have to be able to, we can only train as hard as we can recover. And if we're like in a position where our body's very stressed and inflamed, you're not going to be able to recover properly, which means you need to adjust your training volume. Now, 2 big things that have a huge impact on cortisol and stress in your diet. One is staying hydrated. So I take a lot of electrolytes all day long, particularly here in Dubai, it's very hot. So I'll drink maybe 8 to 10 liters of fluid a day, electrolytes with all meals. I'd recommend for everyone listening to this, you have 2 grams of pink Himalayan salt with every meal. Just helps to have extra salts and minerals. And I'd also supplement with a very high quality magnesium product. The next thing you want to do in terms of limiting cortisol is fairly obvious and something I am not great at taking heed of because I love it, and that's caffeine. So caffeine is a stimulant. Stimulant increases stress levels and anxiety. And I notice this if I have too much caffeine or get too buzzed, that I feel very anxious. So an important thing to understand is you don't want super high levels of caffeine. And caffeine has a half-life of at least 12 hours. So what we really want to focus on doing is making sure you're ideally not having caffeine after like 1, 2 p.m. in the afternoon, because otherwise it's going to be really disruptive in terms of your sleep patterns. So I would recommend a max dose, 200 to 400 milligrams of caffeine a day. If I'm honest, I probably do around 700 milligrams a day. I have one pre-workout drink before training that's probably 250, 300 milligrams, 2 coffees each, so probably 200 milligrams. So I'm probably sitting around 700 on average. Now, one of the best ways to fix and improve cortisol is sleep. So I've probably who's listened to the podcast a lot has heard me harbour on about tracking. So I use the Oura Ring. It's actually a Gucci one. It's pretty cool. It had a good, cool gold band on the outside of it, but it broke off. You probably shouldn't train with that. But the important thing with sleep is you want to try and get a minimum of 7 hours good quality sleep a night. From a longevity point of view, your life expectancy decreases dramatically once you go under that. So 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night is optimal. It's really what we want to be focusing on. Try not to eat within 2-3 hours of going to bed. Try not to drink too much fluid within 2-3 hours of bed. In terms of really good supplements to take in terms of aiding with sleep, I'd recommend using the Sleep Stack from Supplement Needs is personally what I use. It has things like 5-HTP, magnesium, L-theanine, all to allow you to get into a deeper level of sleep. Now, number 4, if we look at stress reduction techniques, we can do things like deep breathing, meditation exercises, anything like that that's really going to help in terms of calming your body down, like journaling. This all helps a lot. And I would say one of the biggest triggers we have right now is one of the biggest gifts we have in the world, which is our phones. So we don't want to be relying on our phones all the time. The first thing you wake up, don't look at your phone. Try not to look at your phone before you go to bed. Like guilty, I do this quite a lot sometimes, but try and control this, because this is one of the bigger things that triggers you off in terms of stress and cortisol, and particularly if you've got work stuff on your phone all the time. Now, these are some really easy things you can implement in terms of managing stress and cortisol. One extra thing that I'm going to be doing is adding in a peptide, an adrenal peptide from UAE Peptides, to help try and improve my body's management of cortisol whilst dealing with the root cause of the problem. So you can't supplement your way out of this. However, you can try and slay the dragon with 2 heads from 2 different sides. So I'd trying to focus on the root cause, add in some of the supplementations we've spoken about earlier in here, the sleep strategies, reducing your training volume, and try and deal with the problem you have. And I think an important thing for everyone in terms of life is understanding you're going to have seasons of life where it's very busy and stressful. You have seasons of life where it's more chilled out. And the most important thing is you just do your very best with where you are right now. And if you're in a very stressed period of time, if you're very, very busy, just make the best of the situation. And if you're one of our clients at CJ Coaching, just let us know if you've got a lot of these things going on, because we can adjust your training volume accordingly. And that's the big thing that I personally am having to take home from this, is that me having to train less to get better results because my body's stressed isn't me being a pussy. It's just me actually using my brain and taking the right advice and guidance. So if that's you, do what needs to be done. If you have any questions on this, message me on Instagram, LinkedIn, or Facebook, and say cortisol. You listen to the Cortisol podcast, and we can run through how we can help optimize this for you. And if you're not sure if you have an issue with cortisol, get a blood test done. If you're in the UK, Medichecks is great. If you're in Dubai, DNA Health Clinic is very good. The US, if you just Google it, there's loads of companies do it. And then you know factually where you're at, and you're not guessing. So if you guys enjoy the podcast, make sure you smash the like button. If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe, share it with a friend, and we'll see you next episode soon.